right, Chapter 4, Lessons 6 and 8. We're doing 2 lessons again today. We're doing multiply and divide fractions. So here, to multiply fractions, you multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So here, when we have a over b times c over d, you're going to multiply the numerators, a times c, and then you're going to multiply the denominators, b times d. And then if you can simplify, you should do that at the end. If you have a chance to simplify before you multiply, that's also a good idea, to simplify before you multiply. To divide fractions, you're going to multiply by the multiplicative inverse. Another name for multiplicative inverse is the reciprocal. So when we divide fractions, we multiply by the reciprocal. And I like to say that we will leave it, change it, flip it. So we will leave it, change it, flip it. So the first fraction stays the same, the division becomes multiplication, and the second fraction gets flipped to the reciprocal. So 3/4 becomes 4/3. And then you just follow the rules for multiplication. So when we multiply fractions, once again, you're going to multiply the numerators and you're going to multiply the denominators. But of course, if you can, you should simplify before you multiply. Very good. And then for dividing fractions, just like we just wrote down on the in the warm-up, we are going to multiply by the reciprocal. So here, if I'm dividing 3 divided by 1/4, that's equal to 12. If I multiply the reciprocal of 1/4 is 4/1. So 3 times 4 is also 12. So when you divide fractions, you multiply by the reciprocal. So for the examples, once again, you can see 1/2 times 1/3. You're multiplying straight across. So 1 times 1 in the numerator and 2 times 3 in the denominator. So that gives us 1/6. Down here, if we have a whole number times a fraction, of course, we're going to put that whole number over 1. And then we'll just multiply straight across again. If I can simplify, like this 2 and that 4, they didn't do it here. They are showing simplifying down here. You should simplify before you multiply. Okay? For example 3, here we have 2/7 times -3/8, multiplying straight across. But before we do that, we're going to simplify. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So when we multiply straight across, we get 1 times -3. 1 times -3 gives me -3. And 7 times 4 is 28. Okay? I want you to pay attention to the fact that this negative can be either in the middle of the fraction, it can be in the numerator, or it can be in the denominator. Okay? But it can only be written once. Okay? Now, with dividing, this is example 1 and 2 for dividing, you're going to leave it, change it, flip it. Okay? So the first fraction stays the same. We can go ahead and put this over 1, right? So the division becomes multiplication. And then the reciprocal of 5/1 is 1/5. Very good. So then you can multiply straight across and you end up with 1/15. For example 2, we have 3/4 divided by -1/2. Again, we're going to leave the first fraction. The division becomes multiplication. And the second fraction becomes the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of -1/2 is -2/1. And then, of course, before we multiply, if we can, we should simplify. So we end up with -3/2, which simplifies to a -1 1/2. So for the got it, once again, with multiplication, you're going to multiply straight across. And then if you can, of course, you're going to simplify before you multiply. Can I simplify in example A?
No.
No. So we're going to multiply straight across. So we have 3 times 1 over 5 times 2. You only have to write this once in your notes. Okay, because if it's this simple, when you do your homework, all you have to do is just to do the multiplication. So this is going to be 3/10. Is everybody clear?
Yeah.
For the division, again, we're going to leave it, change it, flip it. Okay, so over here, we rewrite the 3/4. That stays the same. The division becomes multiplication, and the 1/4, we flip it, becomes 4/1. Very good. And then, of course, before we multiply, we can simplify. So the 4's can simplify to 1's. And when we multiply straight across now, we have 3 times 1 is 3. And 1 times 1 is 1. So our final answer is 3. For example B, we have 2/3 times -4. Now I'm going to put this over 1. So you can see that we're multiplying 3 times 1 in the denominator, right? So in the numerator, we have 2 times -4, which is -8, over 3 times 1, which is 3. And now we'll change the improper fraction back to a mixed number. So the answer is still going to be negative, right? How many times does 3 go into 8? 2 times. With how many left over? So that's going to be 2 and 2/3, negative. All right, so here, over here, for the division B, we've got -4/5 divided by 8/9. Okay? So we're going to rewrite the first fraction. That's -4/5. We're going to leave it, change it, flip it, right? So the division becomes multiplication, and the 8/9 becomes 9/8. Very good. We're multiplying by the reciprocal. Now, watch this. Can I simplify before I multiply?
Yes.
Yes. So with the 4 and the 8, what can I divide into those two?
4.
I can do 4, right? So 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. So now we can multiply straight across. So -1 times 9 is -9, over 5 times 2 is 10. So multiplying and dividing mixed numbers. Now for these, the only difference with multiplying and dividing mixed numbers is that you have to change a mixed number to an improper fraction. Very good. That's the only difference. So here, for example, 4, this becomes 22/5. And then we simplify before we multiply, and we end up with 2 and 1/5. On this side, we're changing the 3 and 1/3 to 10/3. So after we change it to an improper fraction, then we're going to do leave it, change it, flip it. So for the got it example D for multiplying and dividing, let's do the multiplying first. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to change that mixed number to an improper fraction. Okay? So we're going to have 1/4 when we rewrite, 1/4 times, this is going to be 72, 76 over 9. Right? And then, of course, we will simplify before we multiply, right? So find a common factor. So what can I divide 76 divided by 4? Yep, we sure can. This is where you can use your calculator to help you. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 76 divided by 4 is 19. And now we're going to multiply straight across. So when we multiply straight across, we have 1 times 19, which is 19, divided by over 1 times 9, which is 9. And now we change that improper fraction back to a mixed number. So that's going to be 19 divided by 9. So 9 goes into 19 2 times, with how many left over?
1.
So that's going to be 2 and 1/9. Is everybody clear? All right, so for this example, you are going to change your mixed number to an improper fraction. So 5 1/3 becomes, good, 16/3. And then we're going to multiply times, this is going to, I'm going to write 3 over 1. And now, before we multiply, we can simplify. Good. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 1 down here. And now, when we multiply straight across, we have 16 times 1, which is 16, and 1 times 1, which is 1, which just brings us to 16. So you can go straight to the 16 if you want. Okay? All right. How about this division? So if I'm dividing, let's do the F first. Okay, let's do this one. So here now we have two mixed numbers, right? We have two mixed numbers. We're going to change them both to improper fractions. So here, the negative 1 7/8 becomes negative 15/8, right? So that's going to be negative 15/8 times the negative 2 2/5 becomes a negative, very good, negative 12/5. And now, before we multiply, we should simplify. So here we're going to have a double simplifying again, right? So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3. And let me change colors here. 8 and 12 we can divide by 4, right? So 8 divided by 4 is 2. And 12 divided by 4 is 3. So now we can multiply straight across. So we have, and don't forget, negative times a negative is a positive. So we have negative 3 times negative 3. That's going to give me a positive 9. And that's over 2 times 1, which is 2. And now we can change that to a mixed number. So how many times does 2 go into 9?
4 and 1.
4 with 1 left over. So that gives us 4 1/2. So for dividing, we still have to change the mixed numbers to improper fractions. So we're going to write the whole number with a denominator of 1. The division becomes, oh, actually, we're not going to do that yet. We're going to rewrite. So we have to change the 1 1/3 to an improper fraction. So that's going to be 3 plus 1. That's going to be 4/3. So now this is where we're going to do the leave it, change it, flip it, right? So we've got 5 over 1. The division becomes multiplication, and the 4/3 becomes 3/4. Very good. Now we multiply straight across. So 5 times 3 is 15, and 1 times 4 is 4. Now we change it to a mixed number. How many times is 4 go into 15? 3 times, with how many left over? 3/4. All right, for the last one, once again, we need to change the mixed number to an improper fraction. So when we rewrite, we're going to go ahead and rewrite the first one, so that's negative 3/4. And then we're dividing by 2 1/2 bit, which becomes 3/2. Very good. And again, this is where you're going to leave it, change it, flip it. Okay? So when we do that, we end up with negative 3/4. The division becomes multiplication, and the 3/2 becomes 2/3. And then you can see, oh look, we have some double simplifying again. So 2 and 4, we can divide both of those by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. Then the 3's can cancel 2 ones. And now we just multiply straight across. Now, remember, a negative divided by a positive is going to give me a negative. So, negative 1 times a positive 1 gives me negative 1. And then that's over 2 times 1, which is 2. For the last two examples, it says humans sleep about 1/3 of each day. Let each year equal 365 and 1/4 days. Determine the number of days in a year the average person sleeps. So you have to know that you are multiplying here, okay, because you're doing 365 and 1/4 days, and each one of those days gets 1/3 1/3 of the day is sleeping. Is everybody with me? So that's going to be multiplication. So when we multiply, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the 365 and 1/4 to a mixed number. Then, of course, we're going to simplify before we multiply. So we have smaller numbers. It's still a big number, but smaller than 1,461, right? And then we just multiply straight across and then change the final answer to a mixed number. So the average human sleeps 121 and 3/4 of a days, 3/4 days each year. For the last example, it says the side pieces of a butterfly house are 8 1/4 inches long. We want to know how many side pieces can be cut from a board measuring 49.5 inches long. So here we want to find out how many of the side pieces can be cut from the large board. So that means that we are going to divide the large board into smaller pieces. So that's 49.5 divided by 8 1/4. So for both of these, you have to change them both to mixed numbers. And once you change them to mixed numbers, then you can leave it, change it, flip it. So this becomes 99.5. The division becomes multiplication. And the 33/4 becomes 4/33. So then you can simplify before you multiply. And then you multiply straight across. 3 times 2 is 6, and 1 times 1 is 1. So that means that we can cut 6 side pieces from that from the 49.5 inch long board.